So we just discussed the January 6th hearing that took place, where the person testifying, Cassidy Hutchinson, dropped bombshells about Trump wanting to go to the Capitol on January 6th, and because he wasn't allowed to, getting in a physical altercation with a Secret Service agent, and then him throwing a plate of food against the wall whenever he read the AP article from former Attorney General William Barr, where William Barr clearly stated there was not wide-scale voter fraud in this election. Trump freaked out, threw his plate of food against the wall. And then, of course, Trump reacting positively to the chants hang Mike Pence that were going on as they broke into the Capitol, alleged from Cassidy Hutchinson that his response was, Mike deserves it. So I think it's only fair when you have this groundbreaking of information come out to give the other side's perspective, to let the accused have their say. So that's what we're going to do. And we're going to be looking at Trump's absolute explosion on Truth Social during the hearings and after the hearings. We can't even go through all of them because there's so many, but we'll read through some of the ones that just, he's angry, guys. Understandably, he's being exposed for not just his anti-democratic stuff, but also his wild temper and erratic actions behind the scenes. So first, while the hearing was going on, Trump said, I hardly know who this person, Cassidy Hutchinson, is, other than I heard very negative things about her, a total phony and leaker. And when she requested to go with certain others of the team to Florida after my having served a full term in office, I personally turned her request down. Why did she want to go with us if she felt we were so terrible? I understand that she was very upset and angry that I didn't want her to go or be a member of the team. She is bad news. Again, one of the things I said in our previous segment was the first instinct of Trump and Trump bootlickers on Fox News was to go after her. Was a bad worker. This, that, and the other. She's not trustworthy. Okay, but the stuff in her testimony, I agree. She's probably not a great person in my standards if she has wanted to work for someone like Donald Trump for the time that she did. But that doesn't mean that it's not in her best interest right now to tell the truth and to expose what was going on behind the scenes on that day. His next message, this was still while the hearings were going on, never complained about the crowd. It was massive. So this is referring back to him getting mad that in that front area, there wasn't that many people because they weren't allowed to go into the front with weapons. And he wanted them to be able to go in the front with weapons. But I will say the crowd was massive. On that day, he overdoes it. He says 2 million. That's not true. But there was a lot of people there. They just weren't allowed to go with their weapons in front of the stage. And that was one of the things exposed that he was mad about. I didn't want or request that we make room for people with guns to watch my speech. Who would ever want that? Not me. Besides, there were no guns found or brought into the Capitol building. So there were definitely, I would have to look back specifically on in the building, but there were definitely, as shown in these January 6 hearings, guns all around the perimeter. That guy in the tree with a rifle, definitely guns on the premises. So where were all these guns? But sadly, a gun was used on Ashley Babbitt with no price to pay against the person who used it. So when we were watching the hearings live, I pulled up his Truth Social account to see what he was saying, and we read this Truth is what they're called. And my response to that part of it, Ashley Babbitt, the person who used the gun to kill her, wasn't held responsible. It was a police officer who was getting attacked by a mob of people breaking into the Capitol. What was he supposed to do? And what was supposed to be done now after she was shot, which again, as I said when we were live streaming, I don't wish that happened. I'm so heartbroken that she was manipulated by right-wing media, that she was manipulated by Donald Trump to believe these lies to such an extent that she would go to the Capitol and end up dying because of those lies. So it's heartbreaking. I wish she hadn't died. But pretending like the police officer who shot her as they were breaking in and attacking the Capitol wasn't in his own right to protect himself in that situation with a gun is insane. Her fake story that I tried to grab the steering wheel of the White House limousine in order to steer it to the Capitol building is sick and fraudulent, very much like the unselect committee itself. Wouldn't have even been possible to do such a ridiculous thing. Her story of me throwing food is also false, and why would she have to clean it up? I hardly knew who she was. Knowing her well, like being a bestie with her, has nothing to do with if she would have to go in and clean up your ketchup plate of food. And this is something he keeps repeating. I barely knew who she was. I barely knew who she was. That has nothing to do with it. As the president, there are so many people around you all the time. So whether or not you were familiar with them as an individual has nothing to do with how likely it is that they overheard incriminating conversations, or at least groundbreaking conversations. Next, and he starts to really spaz now. She changed lawyers a couple days ago, and with it, her story totally changed. Shocker. And then this is something he's been saying a lot. Cheney conveniently left out the snippet in my speech to go peacefully and patriotically. Isn't she disgraceful? Points in the speech that they showed were relevant for specific reasons. No one claimed you never gave some, never alluded to the fact that your followers should be peaceful, but it doesn't matter when the bulk of your speech was clearly meant to have them go to the Capitol, and the specifics of exactly what you wanted to do, we don't know. But we do know you wanted that electoral process, that certification of the electoral count, not to happen. He then said, there is no cross-examination of this so-called witness. This is a kangaroo court. Her body language is that of a total bull artist, Fantasyland. The cross-examination thing's crazy. They have Republicans, they have Democrats. The Republicans chose not to make this a more bipartisan committee. They decided not to do that. So as far as I'm concerned, that's on you. But they even do have Republicans on the committee, and Liz Cheney's asking most of the questions a lot of the time. And then he said, I'm getting tired. Will anybody ever be allowed to say that the election was rigged and stolen? Well, no, because it's not. I mean, you can say it, but it's not true. So that's why it's not going to be something we focus on in the January 6th hearings. Will the unselects ever discuss that our country is going to hell because of a fraudulent election? How about analyzing the election results? Yep, we've done it many times, buddy, and you lost. And finally, he said, I never said Mike Pence deserves it. Another made-up statement by a third-rate social climber. You said many, many things in public that weren't as explicit as he deserved it, but definitely showed how much you believed he was in the wrong that day and how much you wanted his followers to go after him. I missed two more. And then he said a total phony, and then he said bad handwriting, that of a wacko. Okay. So there we go. That's what Trump had to say. Honestly, that's what you do when you don't have a good argument. You go after the person a bunch of times. You just call it a lie and say, she's not credible because I barely knew who she was. Again, I don't care if you knew who she was. There are tons of photographs of her around you, are always around Mark Meadows, who she directly worked for. So the idea that she would have overheard a lot of these conversations is absolutely reasonable. And then you have to say, as someone who is on board with Trump each step of the way until January 6th, and it sounds like even after she was willing to work with him based on Trump's claims, that's just likely untrue as well. But even so, it still makes sense that as these revelations came out, someone who is even pro-Trump, who was there that day, may still go, I don't want to be caught up in anything criminal with this, so I'm going to come out and just tell the truth so that I can have my hands clean of it. Again, you take it all the way to what Trump is claiming, which, she was so on board with me even after January 6th. Okay, cool. Let's pretend we believe that. I still think it would make more sense for her to want to come out and tell the truth about this to clear her hands of any possible wrongdoing than her making this all up completely. She's a complete Trump loyalist all this time, and then suddenly she decides to flip. No, that makes much less sense than the heat has been getting turned up on the information that's coming out of of that day and the build up to it. And she's thinking, I would rather be on the side of history that tells the truth than gets caught up in this big criminal downfall.